Every year, many hikers die in the mountains, but there was one incident that is still a matter of speculations. In 1959, a group of young adventurers set out into Russia's frozen wilderness and vanished into the snow. Weeks later, investigators found a ripped tent, snow boots, and bodies scattered across the snow. This is the story of the mystery of Dyatlov Pass. Ten experienced skiers and hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute planned to go on a hike in the Ural Mountains in late 1959. One of them turned back early because of knee pain, so the remaining 9 continued. Each had already earned Grade 2 hiking certifications and expected Grade 3 after the trip, which was the highest at the time. By January 31st, they reached a high open area near Mount Otorten. The next day they attempted to cross a mountain pass, but a fierce snowstorm forced them off the course. Instead of retreating into the protective forest, they stopped on an exposed slope of a mountain, which is called the Dead Mountain in Russian. The temperatures were brutal, dropping far below freezing temperature. They had a portable stove, but they had not used it that night, which suggests that they weren't expecting very harsh conditions. February 12th, they missed their expected check-in. Concerns began to spread among families and classmates. By February 20th, search teams were mobilized. On February 26th, rescuers finally discovered the camp. If you're enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more coming for you. The tent was half collapsed, partly buried in snow, and most striking of all, it was slashed open from the inside. There were boots neatly arranged, backpacks abandoned, food laid out but untouched, and no signs of a struggle. Outside of the tent, faint footprints led down the slope toward the forest. They were left by people in socks or a single shoe or barefoot. About half a kilometer downhill stood a tall Siberian pine. At its base, 2 bodies were discovered, wearing only underwear and light clothing. A small fire had been lit nearby, and branches high on the tree were broken, as if someone had climbed up in desperation to look for the tent or to snap wood. Not far from the tree, searchers found 3 more bodies, positioned as if they had been trying to crawl back into the camp. They had not made it. All 5 showed signs of freezing to death in the snow. Investigators thought the tragedy might be explained by exposure alone, but that was about to change very quickly. In early May, about 75 meters deeper into the forest, the last 4 hikers were also located. They had been buried under several meters of snow in a ravine at the bottom of a shallow stream. Unlike the first 5, these 4 were better dressed, some even wearing clothing cut from the earlier victims. But their condition raised disturbing questions. 3 of them had suffered massive internal injuries, 2 with crushed rib cages and 1 with a severe skull fracture. Strangely, their skin showed no cuts or open wounds, as if the force that struck them had come from pressure rather than an impact on the surface. On top of that, 1 woman's tongue was missing, and another man's eyes were missing. The same month, with all 9 hikers now accounted for, the investigation ended. The official conclusion was that they had died because of a compelling natural force. But what that force might have been, investigators never explained. And that is where the real mystery begins. One of the explanations for what happened at the Dyatlov Pass is something called a delayed slab avalanche. A slab avalanche is where a large, solid plate of compacted snow suddenly breaks away from the layers beneath it and slides down. Unlike loose snow avalanches, which look like soft powder cascading downhill, slab avalanches are heavy and rigid, almost like chunks of ice being pushed forward. They can be deadly even if the moving slab is not very big. The hikers chose to set their tent on a mountain slope that wasn't naturally flat. To make space, they cut into the snow and carved a level surface. Superficially, this seemed to make sense because it stabilized their tent and kept them from sliding down in their sleep. But by doing so, they disturbed the delicate layering of snow beneath. Now add another element: katabatic winds. These are powerful freezing winds that rush down a mountain slope at night. These lightly pushed more snow onto the already weakened spot above the hiker's tent. The extra weight built up over hours. Eventually, the fragile snowpack gave way. A heavy slab, maybe the size of a small car, broke loose and slid directly onto the tent. The force of the slab pressed their bodies against the hard surface beneath them, ending their lives. After that impact, chaos followed. Some may have been seriously hurt, others just terrified that more snow would follow. In their panic, they grabbed a knife and slashed their way out from the inside, rather than unzipping it and losing precious seconds. Clocks found on some of the bodies stopped in the early morning hours, which suggests they fled before dawn. Outside, the temperature was brutally low, around minus 25 degrees Celsius. Yet many left without boots or coats, some in socks or even barefoot. That made hypothermia almost certain. Within hours, most of them collapsed in the snow, unable to fight the cold. Another possible explanation is something called infrasound. Experiments have shown that infrasound can cause symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, shortness of breath, anxiety, and even panic. People exposed to strong infrasound sometimes feel an overwhelming sense of fear without understanding why. The Ural Mountains, where the Dyatlov group set up their camp, are known for strong winds. When wind rushes around a mountain, it can form powerful swirling patterns of air called vortices. These air vortices can sometimes produce infrasound. On the night of the incident, the unique shape of the slope and the speed of the wind could have created exactly these conditions. If so, the hikers might have been exposed to a burst of infrasound inside their tent. This could explain why they cut their way out of the tent rather than calmly walking out of it. The panic that drove them outside may have passed quickly, but by then, it was too late to recover. However, the infrasound theory does not explain everything. It does not account for the severe chest and skull injuries found on some of the bodies. But things get stranger still. Some of their clothes showed signs of radiation. How did that happen? We're talking about a time when the Soviet Union was tight-lipped. Nuclear accidents happened, like one in 1957 at the Mayak facility that released radioactive fallout in the air. That spread contamination over parts of the region. One of the hikers had even worked at that facility and helped with the cleanup. Could his clothes have carried radiation unknowingly? What if there was a military test nearby? Maybe a rocket launch gone off course, a parachute mine, or some secret radiation experiment. Maybe the hikers wandered off into an unauthorized area. These ideas fit some of the odd facts. Radiation connects to the other mysteries. Why clothing was oddly worn or missing, why the government appeared so quick to close the case, and why files were sealed. People were suspecting a cover-up. Jump ahead 60 years, it's 2019, and Russia's authorities reopened the Dyatlov case because the families and the media and the public keep pressing for answers. Although the investigators adopted the slab avalanche theory as the answer, Some things like the loss of one victim's tongue and the eyeballs of the other, and the presence of radiation on some of the clothes, still remain unanswered, and the mystery remains an unresolved one, even today.